Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary, and this is the third in a series of astrological explanations for pain. Now, this is the chart of my next, I'm going to say the word client, but it's not a client. This is the next chart of my volunteer. And thank you very much to Ria, who has agreed for her chart to be used here. I might add that all the patients that I'm talking about today, all their names have been changed for patient confidentiality, but very kindly shared their charts so they can help other people, which I think is fab. Now, this particular lady, so here's her story. So it was originally an RSI, repetitive strain injury, from hotel work back in the fall of 92, made worse after the birth of my eldest, August 96, properly sprained it then, I'm pretty sure. It sort of bothered me on and off, especially during pregnancy, but the birth of my youngest on the 15th of February 2011 did a lot more damage to it. Yes, although I do get other pains at other times, this is purely in my hip. So I've asked her what the pain level is, and she said, I hate those type of questions, lol. At its worst, I cannot walk, or it's very painful to walk. Yet if I'm not on it, it doesn't hurt. So I find it hard to quantify. When I have a particularly bad episode, it can take weeks to resolve. The last really bad one, which took literally 2 to 3 weeks to resolve, would have been triggered on the 12th of February this year. I stood too long on hard floors. At the moment I'm having some sensitivity, enough to take ibuprofen here and there, but not sure when it started this time. So she gave me the birth of the eldest child, 11th of August 96, though it's about 3 days later when I had the injury to my hip. That would have been the similar time in Croton, New York. Pretty sure it was 3 days, so the 14th. So let's just do some explanations of what's happening here. So now, first up, we need to take into account the major parts of the chart, and here we have somebody with a Virgo ascendant, Sun in the 6th house, and Moon in Cancer. Before we go anywhere else, those three things need to be taken into account. Somebody with a Virgo ascendant is always going to be concerned with their own health, because Virgo is the sign of health and healing. So they'll be concerned if not only with their own health, but other people's health, or just health in general. Sun in the 6th house has exactly the same expression. The 6th house in astrology governs health and healing. It's a little bit like the 6th sign of the zodiac. If you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6th sign of the zodiac is Virgo. So this is somebody who's got a double whammy of Virgo influences in their chart. And but being the word, she actually is an Aquarius, and that's all about freedom. Don't hold me down. Is one of the freedom is one of the Aquarius refrains. And since this series of videos is about Saturn, we need to be observing where Saturn is or was or can be, or how the person reacts to it. Now, not absolutely everybody has a difficult time with Saturn. Generally speaking, Capricorns are okay with it because it's their ruling planet. If you've got a friendly internal dialogue with Saturn with a trine, this is the symbol for a trine here, or a sextile, which I haven't got, I can't show you a sextile, I haven't got it here, but if you've got a trine or a sextile, then your relationship, your own personal relationship with Saturn might be quite fluffy. Now, but in this particular person's case, so there's the Sun, there's Saturn, there's absolutely no conversation between any of her planets until she gets to Uranus. So the Sun isn't talking to the Moon, the Sun isn't talking to Mercury, the Sun isn't talking to Venus, the Sun isn't talking to Mars, the Sun isn't talking to Jupiter, the Sun isn't talking to Saturn. The Sun has got no conversations, because the aspects represent conversations, between any of her planets until we get to Uranus, which is the ruling planet to Aquarius, and it's got a nice trine. So it's almost as if her sun sign, who she is, what she's up to, is not in any sort of conversation with any of the other planets in her chart. So a lot of the time, the things that happen to her, she's going to try and think her way out of them being an Aquarius, but that's not going to work because her thinking planet is in the sign of Pisces, so she definitely needs to use her intuition. Unfortunately, her Mercury is square to her Saturn, so there we go. She's not even going to like thinking about the story of Saturn, which is responsibility, authority, do the right thing, and her own natal Saturn is in the sign of Gemini, which is very, very changeable. So I would recommend before we even start that if I was making an astrological slash hypnotherapy slash homeopathy prescription, in fact I'd probably use flower essence in this case, for this particular lady we'd need somebody with variety, because Gemini is the sign of variety. So let's go to some of the dates that she's talked about. So it was the autumn, because that's the lovely American word there, fall. It was the fall of 92 that working in a hotel she got RSI, and that's when her pain started. Now because she's got a Virgo ascendant, she knows all of these dates. Hurrah! If we were interviewing a Pisces, unless they had Virgo planets, we wouldn't have any dates, because they're, don't forget I'm a Pisces, Pisces don't really record much stuff, but Virgo ascendant, great. So let's go back to the winter, and we'll use the month November, because I tend to think of November as more sort of a winter month, and we're going to go back to 1992. So off we go, because she was born in the 70s, so 92 she's going to be in her 20s. 1992. There we go, and let's go to the 11th month, and we go to the 1st just for something to do. There we go. So what do we spot? There's Saturn. So Saturn was up here when she was born. We're now into the year 1992, so she's had a Saturn return. She's 20. She's not had her Saturn return yet. So Saturn was up here when she was born. It's made a circuit all the way around here, and she seems to have survived, and I'm using that word lightly, not seriously. She seems to have done very well, not having any issues, but now Saturn is in her own sign, and it's right slap bang there on her Venus. So Saturn actually started transiting for you, Rhea, 91, so you might need to think back a little bit. In fact, I mean, just done a bit of a retrograde there. February 91, what was going on for you then? Because Saturn's just started into the sign of Aquarius, it's just pinged past your Jupiter's dark night of the soul when Saturn and Jupiter conjunct. So you need to think back to the hotel work you were doing. How did you actually feel about it? I mean, actually I worked in a hotel a couple of times, once, and I quite enjoyed it. I used to get really nice cooked breakfast, yum. But in your case, Rhea, we've got going back to November, we've got Saturn is now transiting, and it's just working its way to your sun sign, because your sun sign's 25 degrees. And oh, did I mention earlier? I said Virgo ascendant, Sun in the 6th, and Moon in Cancer. So again, we've got another sensitive sign here, and we've got Pisces insensitive, Mercury insensitive Pisces. So we've got an Aquarius, freedom loving, who has some sensitive bits that she needs to recognise. Yeah? Now, all of this was made worse. I can never say that word, exasperated. Exasperated. Made worse. I was trying to use a flash word there, so forget it. The birth of her, so it sort of bothered me on and off, especially during pregnancy, but the birth of my youngest did more damage to it, her hip, yeah. But let's go to the eldest child, 11th of August 96. So we don't need the precise time, we just need the 11th of August 96 to see what was transiting. So this is different from that child's actual personal birth chart. We need the date is, so everything was made worse, 11th of August. So let's go to the 11th. Bing, 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 bing of August. This jumps about, doesn't it? So what's going on now? Saturn's moved. You could say it was in opposition to these planets, but that's not really going to cause much. Uranus has now started a transit. The Sun going to be going over the ascendant. That's quite nice. Mercury's there. There isn't anything overly stressful here, and Saturn's already done its bit. Yeah, so that's not anything that we can blame astrology. We've got Uranus is going to be transiting, but since that's the ruling planet to Aquarius, that's not a bad thing. And Sun and Venus in the 6th house, again, you need to be looking after your health. But when Uranus makes the transit, which it's going to spend 5 or 6 years doing, it does shake things up. But normally speaking, Aquarians are quite happy with that. So I personally wouldn't blame is the wrong word, but I wouldn't use the birth of your oldest child as contributing in any necessary astrological way to your pain levels. She said although it was 3 days later when she had the injury to her hip, so 3 days would be the 14th. So let's go forward to the 14th because she remembers that date, so it must be important. So let's go to the 14th. Now look, the moon is right on the ascendant, so she's going to be feeling emotional. And when we're talking about chronic pain, the emotions are the things that need to be assisted, because it's not so much that you're in pain, it's how you're feeling about the pain, right? And if you've got moon in Cancer, do you know, I know quite a few Aquarians that have got Cancer moon signs. It's really difficult for them to get a grip of that. This is such a squishy moon sign to have. You're going to be affected by the moon, if nothing else, moon in Cancer. But your sun sign continually is going to be going, oh, never mind about that. Oh, that doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. And she is the mother to quite a number of children, so she's definitely satisfied the need for her moon in Cancer to have children, to be creative, to bring a new generation into the world. But the sun in Aquarius needs to have some freedom, and trust me, having children is the opposite of being free. But hey, there we go. My mother was an Aquarius. She had 5. How did she do that? So the birth of the youngest on the 15th of Feb 2011 has also triggered more things off. So let's go to 15th of Feb 2011. So we've got a bit of a gap here now, but let's go forwards. February, boom, 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 boom. I think she said the 15th. Okay, 15th of Feb 2011. Oh look, the moon. Saturn's over here now. We've got a whole bundle of planets that are also in Aquarius, but you have to listen to my past life podcast on this because we've got a lot of conjunctions. The emotion of the birth of your youngest child is what needs to be helped. And moon in Cancer, I definitely would recommend the flower essence Clematis. That's going to help you heaps. The sun in Aquarius, the flower essence for that would be, remind myself, water violet. So I'd probably make up a prescription. In fact, we're doing a whole chart thing, and I have written about these in all my sun sign books, which flower essences work with the signs of the zodiac. The one for Virgo is Century. The one for Cancer is, as I say, Clematis, and the one for Aquarius is water violet. So I'd be more likely to make up a nice astrological / batch flower essence prescription for the feelings of this. Some days she can't walk. What's she put here? And a particularly bad episode could take weeks to resolve. It's very painful to walk. The whole thing about walking is, moving towards what it is that you want, standing up for yourself, being able to walk your own path, stand your ground, those sorts of things, if we're using metaphorical terminology. So let's have a look at again, see what happened the 12th of February this year. Right. So she had a bad one, 12th of February this year. But didn't do well during her month of birth, 12th of December 2017. So what was going on then? Yeah, Moon in Virgo, right on the ascendant. Mercury and the Sun in her own sign. Saturn's now down here. It's not causing anything yet. It hasn't got towards her sun sign, which it will do in a couple of years' time. But hey, she's prepared now. She knows what to do. Standing for too long. Oh, isn't that interesting? Standing. I stood too long on hard floors. See, we've got lots of words here. Painful, hurt, and hard. There's things that she's finding hard. Might need to ask for some help, Rhea. Probably not so good at doing that, but ask for some help. Neptune's going to be transiting. It's already done it, actually. It's been through the sign of Aquarius. It's past your Mercury now. And let's go to today. So we are the 8th month and we're the 13th. This is where the planets are today. Pluto's going to be making a transit. Recognising, of course, that every time you have a transit going past your sun sign, it doesn't trigger off much other than your own natal Uranus, because the aspects that your sun sign have is just this one here, only one. So every time something comes past, which is what happened to that first transit with Saturn, and if you think of astrology, it's a little bit like playing chess. You know, it's the movement, the way things move from here to there, and you know, and what gets near to something and triggers it off. You know, so you've got to a stage here where it's checkmate, or you've got stalemate. So you know, if you've ever played chess, it's really similar to. I think it's very similar to how the planets are in astrology and how they don't do anything to your birth chart, but they're reflective of other concepts. Yeah, I've got to use the language really carefully when I talk about what a transit does. It doesn't do anything. It reflects some other part of yourself that might need a little bit further questioning. Yeah, but because in your own natal chart the only aspect your sun sign has, and the sun is who you are, is to Uranus, which is fair enough. That's a nice one. You know, Jupiter's down that moment, but you haven't got a conversation going on with your moon, so you don't truly know how you feel, you know, and that's why the flower essence clematis will really help with that, because a clematis moon person just wants to be dreamy and lie in the bath and not do anything. I mean, it's in the 11th house, that's quite nice, so you need to be with other people. Moon in the 11th is you feel better working in a group, so rather than working solo. So for goodness sakes, Rhea, get yourself some mates and work together on it. But we can definitely say that the beginning of all of your inverted now, you know, so quotations, the beginning of all your troubles was definitely precipitated by Saturn going through your own sign of Aquarius. I mean, back in the day, Saturn was the ruler to Aquarius. It's the one that looked after it. You know, normally speaking, Aquarius have got quite a good relationship with Saturn, but in your own case you haven't, because it triggers off Uranus, yeah, when it goes through your own sign. And all these red lines are challenging aspects, and the green lines are positive is the wrong word, but not challenging. The opposite of what challenging is. And you got a nice Venus-Saturn thing going on, I think, there. Yeah, so Venus and Saturn are trine. But there's a lot of squares here. You know, when a planet is square, it's like an internal itch, an irritation. It's something that sort of keeps you going. And you have got Moon opposition Jupiter. So the Moon is how you feel. Jupiter is what your beliefs are. And you're so pragmatic and practical about stuff. Maybe you need to allow a little bit of that dreamy self. You know, dreaming will help you. So have positive dreams. Do things that are creative, will be really beneficial. So that's just a little quick skip around Rhea's chart in this series of astrology and pain, and in particular we're looking at Saturn and how Saturn can kick things off, and you know, it can be painful episodes when Saturn makes a transit. And thank you very much for listening.